at a tough, thank you, a tough secondary school. And I was going to ask you to say a few words about why it was tough, but maybe again we can do that later. And this was in Manchester again, is that right?
Hill.
There you go. I think you just had to say a secondary school in Manchester, and we and then volunteered to teach. And this is the interesting part, in Ghana for a year, and then the sense that year was the real important year for you, where a real life-changing experience. Came back with a lot of intellectual questions, with a lot of energy, and eager to find out about a whole bunch of things around global inequality and injustice and these kind of issues, which of course have become what in a sense have characterized your intellectual journey in the last 20, 30 years. So you're eager to find out more about politics, power, and then you did a part-time master's in development studies again at Manchester, which again I hadn't realized. And then during this time you funded your studies, delivering equalities training to local authorities as well during that time. And then in 1992, you moved to, well, actually at that time, it was moving from a polytechnic to the Research Intensive University of Nottingham Trent University, and you did your PhD scholarship. And I think your supervisor is here today, Professor Tracy Scullin, and it's great that you're here. And this I do have to read because this is your kind of thesis, and this is interesting in a sense. So what Pat was investigating at that time was the racialized development discourses of the UK government as it moved from this area of winding down development to aid to New Labour's renewed engagement and development at the turn of the century. So a really fascinating discourse, and particularly think about the timing. This was 35 years ago. I mean, it's a fascinating time to have done that work. And it's, of course, so relevant now as well. This is the interesting thing. So Pat then took a 3-year career break to look after his small children. And her first academic roles, and these included, for example, roles at Leicester University as a research fellow, temporary lectureships at Coventry, Sheffield universities, all involved, and you describe this well, but challenging commutes, lots of long hours. But I think Pat's underlined the fact that she couldn't have managed this without her husband, Reuben, who also took a career break at this time to look after the family and so on. So fantastic support from the family. So since this time, and in a role in Birmingham, Pat's become established as, and I don't say this lightly, a world-leading postcolonial geographer. And it's always a thrill to have you in our department, actually, Pat. Publishing a range of influential articles, work which has been recognised by the Royal Geographical Society, 2021 Murchison Award, which is specifically for that contribution to geographical science. A whole bunch of other things. You were the first Black chair, of course, at the Royal Geographical Society's annual conference. You've really led the way in Black geographies as an emerging field of study. And you've also been chair of the UK's foremost learning society for Caribbean studies. And you're currently the chair of the race group of the Royal Geographical Society. And you're also currently, of course, co-lead, which many of us do know, the University of Birmingham Stuart Hall Archive Project. I mean, a whole range of things there, and I hope we'll unpack some of that in the next 40 minutes or so. But I say genuine pleasure. It's a genuine pleasure to have you in the school, and it's a genuine pleasure to have introduced you. And at that point, I will stop. Do I need to give you that?
I think so.
There you go. And I will hand things over to you, if that's okay.
Thank you. Okay. I'm not the most confident person when it comes to the tech. Is this okay? Yes. All right. Wow. We've got a real room full of people. And I'm so happy. You know, one of the things that you do when you don't come from an academic background, you kind of keep everybody in their little places. You know, there's my academic life and my non-academic life and my family and the church. You know, you keep everybody separate. And it's really interesting when you have this kind of forum. I remember the same happened at my wedding, where it was just like everybody converged, and he's kind of like, who shall I be then at this point? So it's just lovely, really. I've had lots of messages from people today as well, people who can't make it, or people who are going to be online. I know I've got over 60 plus people online, you know, so there's a lot to be thankful for and grateful for today. And that's kind of where I really want to start with this. The kind of structure that I want to have in place today is to talk about know me without you, which is a phrase I got from Tia Monique Uzo yesterday. I thought it was a really nice phrase. And you'll see that there's names of other people in there, because the first inaugural that I went to was actually Professor Richard Johnson's inaugural in Nottingham Trent University, and he had me speaking at his inaugural, and I've never seen that before or since. And I was like about 6 months pregnant with the young man over here, Moses. And so I kind of arrived and rolled in and sort of gave a testimonial about Richard Johnson. And I just thought it was a really nice thing to have people actually come and say some things about how you've affected their career. So Charlene and Safia and Rita and my husband Ruben will all come in during this and just say a few words. I'm going to emphasize a few words. And I'm looking at my husband like, definitely a few words within the middle of this. And I'm going to try and keep to time. So I'm going to start just with some gratitude, then go to my early life, which I've also reflected on in my writing. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Think about creative practice, which has been a really important part of my career, starting with literature and dance. Literature was really my starting point, and it has continued to be an obsession of mine. And I'm now doing my own creative writing, which I won't so much talk about today, but really kind of thinking about literature as something I've studied and dance as something I've studied. And then think about leadership and this concept of in/security that I've been developing for the last few years, moved to a different form of creative practice, visual art and film. And then finally, how I'm trying to make the discipline and the campus more inclusive. Instead of, inviting a few more people to the table, we're trying to get a bigger table, basically, be much more inclusive, much more able to have a range of people around and available. So let's start with the gratitude. Know me without you. And okay, this is the only picture. I can see my kids' faces are like, oh, this is the only picture I'm going to have of the kids, but it's one of my favorites, partly because Abigail was having none of it. She was only about 4 months at that time. We'd taken her into school. Moses was the only one at school at that time. And so we decided to have a family. This is the only family portrait we've really had done. So I want to thank God. I don't normally bring my God stuff into university, but honestly, without my faith, I don't know how I would have managed amongst these people. So I want to thank God. I want to thank my family. My family have been hugely supportive, and I've said this several times. I've seen lots of Black academics come and go. And one of the things that I think makes a huge difference is whether you've got any support at all. If you're trying to do this on your own, you can get very isolated. So I really want to thank Ruben, to say took a career break after I'd taken my career break. There's not a lot of men, particularly at that time, who would have done that. So thank you so much. Moses and Keziah and Abigail, who gave up a lot of their mother's time to her career. To my own mother, who was called Agnes, and my own dad, who was called Hubert. They've both passed away now. They gave us so much before doing so, though. My sister Pearline, who's here, my brother H, who's they've both been very supportive. That's my older brother and sister, a little bit bossy sometimes, but really supportive. And Gerald, I think, who just arrived. Yep, Gerald is here, and also Lloyd, who got a bit lost, but he got here in the end. Plus all my nieces and nephews. I'm still hoping that Moena will turn up, although she wasn't too sure. So I've got lots of nieces and nephews. That's why I'm not naming them all. But I just want to say that everybody has been tremendously supportive. I also want to thank and have enormous gratitude for friends and colleagues. I particularly want to thank Tracy, because Tracy was my supervisor, and she was the first person to have faith in my project. And, for a lot of Black students, that's when they stop, because nobody will take the project on, nobody will have faith. And Tracy had faith, not only at the beginning, but also as it dragged on, and when I got pregnant, and all of it, she carried on having faith until the graduation. So, and she's carried on supporting my career the whole time. So, you know, I always need to thank Tracy at every step along the way. Parvati, who's been a friend and a guide and a mentor and a support the whole time along. Claire, who's been a tremendous friend to me. In fact, our little writing group, me and Claire and Parvati, was one of the things that really kept me afloat during some of the most difficult times when I was doing temporary lectureships and not really feeling like I fitted in. We had that little group where we would meet each other and write together. It was wonderful. All my Birmingham colleagues, I'd like to thank you for the last, you know, I've been here since 2014 and I've had a lot of support and a lot of encouragement. I want particularly to thank Peter Craftle, who was an incredible kind of mentor to me. I could always go to Peter and he would always make time. So yeah, I want to thank Peter for doing that work. Also, another Peter Jackson, he was the external examiner for my PhD. And it took my career a long time to settle, and Peter carried on writing recommendations and reference letters, and you know, he'd never say no. He'd always be available. He'd always hit the deadline. So I want to thank Peter for that, and he was a great colleague when I worked at Sheffield. Cynthia Anyadi has been running Ferry Road with me over the last few years, and I want to mention Azizat Johnson because she was a dear friend, a great colleague, a sort of a developing academic who was enormously influential in a very short space of time, particularly around Black feminist geographies, and unfortunately died very early at the age of 32. So we remember Azizat. I always have to remember her because she made a huge impact in a short space of time. And then I just want to have gratitude for the networks of people who've supported me. The Society for Caribbean Studies has been a really important network of people with like similar interests. The race group of the Royal Geographical Society, right at the beginning of my career, the Women in Geography Study Group, which is now called, I think, the Gender and Feminist Geography Research Group. But they were just enormously welcoming through Tracy. They kind of welcomed me to retreats and all sorts of things. WGSG was really helpful. The Ferry Road alumni, the people, I run this internship, and then there were lots of people who have graduated from that internship. And I'm enormously encouraged by this new group of Black students coming up and becoming academics and doing PhDs. It's really, really exciting. One of them, Kyla, is at the back here. I'm hoping Mahalia will also come. Coming in. Hi, Rebecca. And all the fellows that work with me, and you'll meet 3 of them today, and all the students that are working with me as well. Just want to express my gratitude for everybody. All right, so I'm going to bring up the first person, Charlene, who is going to, I don't really know what she's going to say, so she's going to come around here. So just speak, that's the mic there. It's just there in the desk. So you just speak into it.
Speak. Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you, Pat, for asking me to speak. It's an honour. But I kind of gained a second mom. And I realise that might be slightly unfortunate for Pat because that means she's now stuck with me forever. Growing up, I didn't have many female role models and even fewer Black female role models. I don't think Pat fully realises how much that mattered. Watching her lead, navigate academia and hold space with both strength and care was an important part in shaping who I've become. Now, I'll be honest, I probably wasn't the easiest academic child. I've always moved to the beat of my own drum. Sometimes it took a little while to get work out of me. I may have spent more hours working outside my PhD than I should have, and sometimes I was a bit too open about my feelings about certain people. But somehow, despite all of that, Pat managed to get a PhD out of me, which is no small feat. What really set Pat apart, though, was trust. She trusted my judgment, whether it was choosing an examiner, applying for grants, or pursuing public engagement ideas, or showcasing my research through events. I'm a bit more of a chatter and a doer than a writer. I've come to learn I'm more of a pracademic, a term I've learnt from the Open University. And when a school system from primary to A-level discourages chattiness or anything that goes outside the norm of standard academic behaviour, it's sad. But Pat made me feel like I wasn't misbehaving or acting in a way that is outside the norms of society. In fact, she encouraged it. She nurtured this behaviour and welcomed it, and I think that's a big part of who I am today as an academic or pra-academic. I will promise, though, I am writing papers, Pat. I haven't given up completely. With Pat, there was never any doubt in me, and that kind of confidence in someone is rare. It changes you. But this speech isn't about me. It's about Professor Patricia Noxolo. It's about her impact, not just as an academic, but as a mentor, a leader, and a role model. The kind of person who doesn't just guide your work, but shapes the way you see yourself and what you believe is possible. So, Pat, thank you for your patience, your honesty, and your unwavering support, and for never giving up on me, even when it was extremely tempting. Everything I go on to do will carry a piece of what you have taught me. And as much as you might wish otherwise, you're not getting rid of me anytime soon.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, let me tell you. Charlene just lights up my day. She comes in and just lights up my day every time. I'm kind of like, oh, okay. Hi, Charlene. She did the balloons. This is pure Charlene. You know, she just arrived with helium. Just did balloons. All right. So this is the first part of what I wanted to say. Is everything okay online? Is people? Yeah. So thinking about my early life, really, in Birmingham. Come on in. Oh, Mahalia. Hi, Lisa. How lovely. Mahalia was one of the Phoebe Road interns. I'll say a little bit about that, but she was also my mentee specifically, so I got to know Mahalia really well. So in my early life in Birmingham, I was the youngest, or I still am the youngest of a family with 5 siblings and a mom and dad. I was born in the mid-60s. We were living in a small house in Birmingham city centre that was linked with my dad's job in the Midlands Electricity Board. He wasn't an electrician. In fact, he was a skilled carpenter, but ended up doing kind of woodwork type work for the Midlands Electricity Board. So one of my strongest memories from childhood is the smell of creosote from the fences. He was always having to creosote fences, and his overalls would come back stinking of this. And that's one of those kind of material traces that you can almost still feel in the nose, you know, even when you think about it. And it's one of the things that made me think about this idea of churn, which I haven't done a lot with, but I have written about a little bit. This idea that Birmingham is constantly, its population is constantly turning over. And I quite like the idea of churn because it has that slightly nauseous feeling when your stomach churns. And it's that sort of sense of, you know, because recently in the local elections, we've had a lot of reform councillors put in place here in Birmingham, and that sort of sense that not everybody is happy with the rollover and turnover of Birmingham, and yet it still keeps happening. The churn is you know, intrinsic to what the city is all about. So this is the road that we grew up on, Rickman Drive. You can see that there are lots of masonettes, those 2-story apartments, and this is where we grew up, on the first floor of a masonette with neighbours who were not able to tolerate a single drum beat from a reggae record, which is unfortunate for them because we did play music. What are you going to do? You have to play music, right? So Rickman Drive had a great neighborhood, or what I remember is a lot of people, a lot of children, a lot of people that we went to school with. I remember concrete walkways and stamping and running along them. I remember kind of parades of shops and chip shops, particularly pubs, and, you know, a kind of sense of community, not necessarily something that's a romanticized, rosy thing. There were problems and issues in that neighborhood. And my colleague Phil Jones, who's here, I remember finding some of his work back from 2004, where he had done some work on Lee Bank as a neighborhood, and the kinds of architecture that was there, the actual deep unpopularity of masonettes as a way of living. But I remember it because I was young, I guess. I remember it as a community that was solid. I remember it as a sort of community where if I did something wrong at school, even without phones, before phones, somehow my mother knew about it by the time I got home. And I don't even know how, you know, but I would get home and it would be straight away. I hear that this happened, you know. I don't even know how she managed it. So it was a kind of a very particular, what I've called in my writing a kind of place ballet, a sort of way of moving, a way of understanding that comes with living in that kind of area. Many of you might recognize this, St. Thomas's Church, or what's left of it, which was just opposite the school that I used to go to, a school called St. Thomas's. And I'd often look through the railings at this weird thing, a half a church, you know, in the kind of post-war era, and behind me there'd be children shouting, you know, coming from very many different places. Commonwealth migration, obviously, but also Jewish children that have come from Ireland. The Irish community were very strong, and that sort of sense that everybody was coming from somewhere, and we were all coming together and kind of mixing together into that playground churn. I've also written a little bit later on about this idea of entanglements between the neighborhood that you're living in and its kind of outside geographies, the sorts of other places that link with it. Oh, here's my nephew. Hi, coming in. Oh, my niece as well. Come. Come. So this is Crazy and Morwenna and Colin, and I won't introduce the children. I'll let you sit down. You're very welcome. So in this piece, I was thinking about entanglements and thinking about family photographs and what they tell you about the kinds of entanglements between the neighborhoods that you're living in and their kind of outer geographies, the places that they connect with. So family photographs circulate in all sorts of ways. We had a particularly disheveled family album where lots of photographs were kind of always spurting out of it. And since my dad passed away, we've kind of distributed all those photographs between us. But those photographs would also circulate to Jamaica and back. You know, often those photographs were taken for family in Jamaica to be able to see that we were doing really well. So photographs and family photographs have particular kinds of geographies, particular forms of circulation. You can see here that this is a kind of, we're on a red brick, which is obviously very much what Birmingham is all about, those kind of red brick balcony. This is me kind of profiting from the fact that my mom can't hold on to me because she's holding on to the twins. So look back at her rather than looking at the camera, which must have been very disappointing. This is back in the day when you had to have the film developed. So obviously I've wasted this one. But you can see my dad's thumb there. So it's not just me, right? My dad's thumb is also in the way. And this is a kind of local entanglement. I think about this, when I see this photograph, I think about the Bristol Road, which was just behind those masonettes, and from which we were getting quite a lot of lead poisoning. There was a lot of evidence around lead poisoning, but nothing really done about it until EU law made it necessary back in 2000 to change, to outlaw lead in petrol. So we were there breathing it all in. And that level of entanglement is right inside in the lungs. There's a writer called Lorna Goodison who talks about the smell of onions in the skin of women as they kind of knead spices into chicken. And similarly, I think that lead is coming into your body and staying there, you know, creating its own problems. Of course, there are much more formal family portraits like this one. They look embarrassed, my family, but you shouldn't look embarrassed. You know, this is actually published and you guys gave me permission. So I like this photograph because it sort of brings up the fact that my mother was a seamstress, and she would often go down to the markets those markets that are now actually quite imperiled, the indoor markets and the rag markets, where she would go and talk to often Jewish market traders. There'd be lots of banter, lots of discussion. I remember that those being quite flirtatious kind of encounters between Black Caribbean women and market traders. And that's how you get the best price for your material, folks. That's how it goes. And then you send that fabric back in barrels as well, you know, back to Jamaica, but you also make clothing for your family, and whatever Pearline wore, I then wore 4 or 5 years later. So actually sometimes when she bought a whole load of fabric, I would wear the dress that she made for me for however many years, and then I would make the dress that she made for Pearline for however many years. So I'd end up wearing the same fabric for a very long time. I remember kind of being quite, especially when it was that sort of seersucker type fabric, being quite upset by this. And this is a kind of a, oh, hey, Nathaniel, this is a quite a sort of tender photograph for me, because this is not long before my mother died. This was her baptism day. We're Christadelphians. Some of you might have heard of them, but actually that they're kind of there's quite a lot of Christadelphian churches in Birmingham. So it's a kind of a center for Christadelphianism, which is kind of interesting. It's part of the kind of faith fabric of the city. So for me, that family photograph is entangled with grief in a way that makes it quite difficult. It was quite difficult for me to look at a certain point. Very tender age for me. I was only 20 when my mother passed away. So that kind of sense that was really difficult to know who I was at that time. And that photograph brings a lot of that back for me. But there were certain points where you have no option but to choose to embody the way in which you're entangled in the world. And that for me was the moment of maturity when I needed to make that choice on a day-to-day. All right, so I'd like Safia to come down and give her small input. She's got lots of cards. So give her the mic, okay. I think you need to wear this. Like this? Yes. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm truly honored to speak here today at my supervisor's inaugural lecture. Professor Pat Noxolo is my supervisor. She's my mentor, and she is a superhero. Yeah. I recently wrote a little paper, a short reflection on GA conference that I went to, which I wrote, Geographers are Superheroes, because they have the power to impact on students the knowledge of the world, the knowledge of everything. So geographers are superheroes. And to me, Professor Pat Noxolo is the #1 superhero. Yeah. Her guidance has been very important and transformative in my career, because she recognized my potentials from the beginning. She encouraged me and brought out the very best version of myself, because I had doubts in my potentials, but she never doubted my potential. She had to bring out the very best version of me. When I kind of try to say something, when I bring up something, I'll just see her stand up from her chair. She'll just go to her shelf, look at the books, and then she'll draw out one of it and say, you need to read this. And when I read it, it blows my mind. Oh my God, she knows me. She knows exactly what I was trying to say. So she's the best, really. And beyond academic excellence, she has shown me what it truly means to be an exemplary mentor. Although she has been very busy, she's always busy, but she always made time to listen to me, to bring out the really best version of what I want to bring out. So she's really a very exemplary mentor and the best supervisor. Yeah. And her commitment to academic excellence not only inspired only me, but a lot of others as well. So she's the #1 superhero. Thank you, Professor Pat Noxolo, for taking me under your wings. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you.
All right, gosh, it's been such a pleasure. I think one of the reasons why I wanted people to come and talk is not just so they say nice things about me, but I think Black Geographies for me is about all the different diversity of Blackness that there is and that there is beginning to be within geography. It's not just about me. It's about all the different kinds of people new voices that are coming through. And they need to have their own voice, right? They can't just be talked about, they must be talking. And it's been wonderful seeing both Charlene always had her own voice, but also Safia kind of really getting their own voice together. It's wonderful. It's one of the real pleasures of the job. All right, so I want to tell you a little bit about the sort of research that I've been doing. I won't go into any much detail about it also because I'm running out of time, but I want to just give you a sense of the kinds of things that I've been doing. I've been dealing a lot with creative practice and thinking about the geographies of creative practice. So how do space and place relate to creativity? I did my PhD field work or, you know, my kind of overseas study connected with my PhD. I did that at Cave Hill in Barbados back in the late 1990s. And there I learned about Wilson Harris. Wilson Harris was a Guyanese novelist. Before he became a novelist and poet, he was a surveyor, so very steeped within physics and with a really interesting kind of sense of connection between landscape and people. So it was very people and place connected, and I found that really exciting as a geographer. So I've written quite a lot of bits and pieces about Wilson Harris, and one of the first bits of funding that I got, Arts and Humanities Research Council funding, was to investigate more of Wilson Harris's work. Over time, I've kind of developed that in relation to quantum physics. I've got very interested in quantum physics, not in and of itself, but because a lot of Caribbean writers are really interested in quantum physics, because they want to see a different connection between themselves and their landscape. So I won't bother going into all of this, but one of the things that is interesting about this is it's a famous kind of slit experiment, and one of the things that it shows is that at the subatomic level, beyond the atomic particle, beyond that, physics behaves very differently. So at the subatomic level, and Azira can tell you more about this afterwards, this is the thing that she's doing, at the subatomic level, things can be in two places at once, more than two places at once. In fact, it's very difficult to track down where they are. So I found that quite interesting, quite exciting. It's more exciting, I think, than Newtonian physics. And in Wilson Harris, I was able to see that he was already thinking about this. He was thinking about a deeper function of memory that moves through the subatomic level, where we can connect ourselves with Amerindians. This is really important because in the Caribbean, so many people have been killed and have died out. There have been enormous numbers of genocides. And so Wilson Harris is saying we can reconnect with all of these people at a very deep level, a primordial level, he says. But it's this lovely kind of paragraph here, which I wouldn't expect you to read through, but he talks about how the earth is not fixed. So we need, as human beings, to understand that we are directly connected with the earth. And I think that is something that comes out of a certain kind of Caribbean sensibility about a geomorphology or a changing landscape that you can't just fix. You can't just walk over it as if it was a film set and empty. It's actually moving. Come on in, come on in. It's moving all the time. Welcome, welcome. Come in and sit down. Yes, yes, come in, Marcia. You okay? So I've been writing about that kind of thing, coming out of literature for a little while. And out of that, I started to explore this in practice to say, well, how can we get people dancing and then get them to connect themselves through dance? And so this was one of the first experiments of this. And my brother H helped me. So he recorded some demonstration videos. I'll show you one of them. So he recorded a few.
Mental balance. So you start, step together, step together, step together, step, and go up, 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 up to the side, up, balance, 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 you balance, balance, and stop.
So H has been a really helpful resource for me because he teaches dance, so he's able to kind of connect with that immediately. And then this is before TikTok or anything like that. In fact, not long before TikTok, I think it was kind of on its way coming. But I thought, well, you know, maybe we could get people to follow the demonstration video, video themselves doing this dance, and then upload it to the internet. And so we ended up with, I wanted the idea that people would be dancing together online, which of course we can really easily do now with TikTok, but at the time it was actually a bit of a technological nightmare. But I went to lots of places, got people dancing, doing different African dances, and then kind of tried to put it together into a gallery. And you can imagine, this is before COVID. So during COVID, we got kind of used to doing things together online in this way. But at this time, we were not really used to it. And it was a really interesting experiment. I also worked with professional dancers. I mean, with Birmingham Royal Ballet and the drum. And I want to show you, they worked with some community groups and did some workshops and tried to make ballet more accessible to people. And I wanted to use ballet as a way of thinking about, to help people to think through their lives within tower blocks and how they had to keep moving all the time and how their lives were very unsettled. And so they devised this ballet based on what people had said in workshops. So you can see that they, I'll show you just at the beginning of this video, they kind of move in. At the beginning of the dance, they move into this flat. Then there are troubles of various kinds, and then they have to move out. And it's Birmingham Royal Ballet that trying to make an accessible way for people to understand the ballet, and also for people to use the ballet to understand their own situation. So each of the dancers gets an opportunity to express what that indeterminacy looks like from their point of view. And it was a really pleasurable thing to work with a ballet company. Professional dancers who have their own ways of working. Very new to me. It wasn't something that I'm trained in or understood. This dancer here in particular was also really good with working with the community. She would literally walk people across the road from the tower block to the drum to make sure that they knew that they were welcome. So I worked with Birmingham Royal Ballet on this thing called Flat Out, where we were thinking about vertical living. How do people live in council flats? Rita, come along and do your bit. Oh, yes, you do.
Thank you very much. Okay. I'll just leave it there. The other ones, I'll forget about it. Right, thank you. Well, I've been working with Pat for for a while, actually. I think a lot of you have already heard some of the comments about Pat's great capacity for care. She's a great teacher, a great friend, and a woman of high integrity. When I was thinking about doing a PhD, I was in London at the time, and I contacted Pat, and we were actually in communication for about 18 months before we both decided we would go ahead. And Pat was saying, why do you want to kind of connect with me? You know, I'm in Birmingham. And she, why don't you talk to this person? I said, I've talked to them. Why don't you talk to this person? I said, yeah, I've met them. What about this person? Yeah, I'm not interested. And so I say all of that to say that I understood the journey of going on a PhD, how difficult it was, and understanding that that relationship with the supervisor is really important because they're going to get to know everything about you, and there has to be that trust and that respect, but also the ability to kind of offer, you know, critique as well. And Pat did that, but with such generosity. I had so many things happen to me on my journey of doing the PhD. It was a really difficult journey for me. And so when I finished, it was very joyful. And I don't think I could have done it with any other person. I had a voice. And when you have a sense of yourself and your identity and what you want to do, people can respond in two ways. They can either be positive or they can be negative to try and dim that light. And Pat always encouraged me to express myself, always encouraged me to be myself. And since finishing my PhD and going on to work on the Stuart Hall Archive project, it's been an incredible project. Obviously, you know, looking at the archives of that great scholar, Jamaican-born scholar, who's very important to this institution. But to do that with Pat, two things I want to leave you with. One, Professor Patricia Noxolo is my first Black teacher. And I say that as someone who came to do a PhD in, you know, I wasn't a young person, let me just say that. And even at my age, the impact of having a Black teacher astounded me as someone who was already a teacher. I didn't realize what the impact of having a Black teacher would be, even for someone at my stage. She's the reason why I'm in the academy. She is the reason. And also as well, we did a presentation at King Edward's School, and we were talking about Stuart Hall. And there was a teacher there, and he was so excited. He was a geography teacher, and he said, oh, can I have a picture with my students? Because obviously we're in geography. And the students said, oh, this is amazing. And one of them said, oh, this Stuart Hall's great. He's really interesting. But he said, you know, Professor Noxolo, you are our Stuart Hall. And I can say that you, Professor Noxolo, you're one of a kind. I don't know if we'll see your like again, Pat, in the academy, but I can say it's been an honor and a privilege to be on this journey with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'll think about all these things tonight and be crying. All right, I'm not going to spend too much longer. I want to kind of think about, so I've been thinking about my research, and now I want to sort of think about, well, what's it kind of adding up to? I was starting to get to the point where, as you've probably recognized, being in the position of being a Black professor, particularly a Black woman professor, it's very unusual in the country. And so it's kind of, I've sort of ended up moving into some leadership roles in relation to a group of younger Black academics coming through. And that's been a real pleasure. One of the things has been that I was chair of the Society for Caribbean Studies for quite a long time, actually, and taking people through the COVID era and through some of the changes that they had to make. And now they've got a really nice, strong committee, which I feel very proud of. But, you know, sometimes you need to take a group through a difficult moment for them to survive as a group. I was one of the co-editors of Transactions of the Institute of British Geographers, which is one of the foremost geography journals. And I hope that at that time I was able to bring in a few small changes which allowed some different voices to come through into the journal. Obviously, you can't stay somewhere forever. You just hope that it will continue, but you don't really know. You know, you can only do what you can do. I've been a committee member of the race group of the Royal Geographical Society for a really long time, and I'm now the chair of the race group. Some of my writing led to me getting the Murchison Award. This is a photograph of all of the awardees for that year. You okay? You're right. All right. And just recently, I've been the lead editor of the Routledge Handbook of Caribbean Studies. So trying to kind of make a difference and give some intellectual lead. I've had sort of formal leadership roles in relation to 2 international networks. Bye. This one was a Leverhulme funded network with a number of academics from various countries, Canada, Amsterdam, Glasgow, Leeds, and we were trying to think about the idea of security and insecurity and how they get negotiated. We came up with the concept, we published around it, a volume recently called Dance Hall in /Securities. We were thinking about security specifically in the context of Jamaican dance hall. How do people negotiate between security and insecurity within their own bodies, within their own bodily performance, in neighborhoods that can be very difficult, or have been in the past, are getting better, but you know, can be quite difficult. How do people negotiate that within themselves? We organized lots of conference events. We did lots of writing together. We put together an art exhibition, and this is where I started to get really interested in visual culture. So
Negus.
I began to work with this writer, with this artist, Sonia Barrett, who we did an exhibition at Midlands Arts Centre, and this was an
so the work is full of speech acts, acts of
through the conversations that we've been having.
Defense,
so
acts of filtering, the acts.
What I'm very keen on is that the research inspires the artist, and then the artist inspires the research, and so we've been working together, myself and Sonia, in a kind of quite circular way, trying to inspire each other. We screened a film, and there was it attracted a lot of Rastafarians because it was a film about Shashamane in Ethiopia. So in screening that film and in doing a radio show related to it, it really meant that people felt very involved. Out of that first international network, I then put another one, which me and Rita worked together on, which was a 1-year Arts and Humanities Research Council funded network called, again, about insecurity. We had a number of provocations where we were trying to just help people to think about security in a number of different ways. We made quite a few films at that time. And I will actually have to finish quite soon. I'll just show you this one about, this is the one that I worked with.
A story with opinions had intercepted her. Explore your story.
That's one good thing. Capital One.
So we filmed at the Royal Geographical
about
Society.
insecurity in the world, about race as one of those insecurities.
This
and
is me with lockdown
Caribbean in the UK.
You begin
you don't bother to
visually show that these places are bound
baby.
together and implicated.
How we
So we had created an
interrelate with each
artwork
other, and
showed
around mapping.
the
How do we understand the map and what's its
That we see so often in Europe.
The fact that it's come into this space at the Royal Geographical Society and it's made such a provocative impact, it's saying a lot of powerful things. And it's something that if you get a chance to experience it, it really seeps into your body as you experience it, both from just looking at it, but also when you experience it close up, you're able to see the different intricacies in that. And that for me really reflects not just dance, which is also a performance, something that you experience in the moment, but also a lot of African diasporic and African rituals, which are meant to be experienced in the moment at the time. And so what we're really...
Sorry, I'm having to speed through. All of these are available on YouTube. The point about that artwork is called Dreading the Map. What she did, Sonia did, was get some old maps, shred them. So maps of Africa, the Caribbean, the UK, and the US. She shredded the maps, and then we, as a group of Black women, sat round together and plaited those maps together. So the idea is that we're no longer separating different places, Africa and the Caribbean. You know, we're showing how interlocked they are, how those histories are actually all related to each other, and using African and Caribbean culture to make those connections. All this was actually made possible by lockdown, because it meant that RGS, the Royal Geographical building, was closed. So then we were able to just take over the whole building and use it as we wanted to. So we plaited this together. Sonia then made it float across the map room. And the map room is a historically very colonial part of the building. It's where people actually set out on expeditions. They got the maps, set out on expeditions, came back, amended the maps. So it's a very colonial space. And so we kind of occupied that space, made it think differently about the places. And when you close up, you can see the detail. We also did some schools work. And then we did this thing called transformations, where we want to set up what we might think of as beautiful experiments to give the Black women on the project, and in particular that was Rita and Tia Monique, an opportunity to just have a pot of money and do what they wanted to do. So what Tia Monique chose to do was a dance-focused film. I'll show you just a tiny bit of this film because it's so beautiful. If I show you I'll show you this. There's a beautiful bit at the end where there's a kind of a baptism that happens. It's absolutely gorgeous. Okay, so she did really well with the film. She was just given a pot of money and she just did what she did. What Rita did was get a group of people together and organize a zine, which is still available online, a global Black Geographies reading group, and then that came into a zine. One of the successes of the project was that there were 3 Black women on the project. All of us shifted our career from this project. So Rita was doing her PhD, she got her PhD. Tia Monique had finished her PhD, she got her first academic role, and then I moved from being a senior lecturer forever into being a professor. So it was very successful from that point of view. So this is a little bit of Rita's zine. You can see it's very beautifully done, a lot of emphasis on photography. And this is, I just wanted to show you this because Tia Monique won lots of prizes, including the Cannes Short Film Festival prize. Okay, Ruben. I know it's 5 o'clock, we won't be long.
Cheers.
I'm more scared of this one than others.
Good afternoon to all. First, I would like, well, you know who I am, so I don't have to tell you I am now. Actually, I missed that bit. Yeah, some of you may see me as Pat's other half. Now, physically, I would say I'm 3/5, and she's 2/5. Intellectually, I would say she's 5/8, and I'm only 4/8. Now, I still remember the first time I met Pat. I still remember. It was at a church gathering in Manchester. And as Pat mentioned, we belong to the same church community. And it was a young people's gathering. Now, I don't remember whether we spoke at that gathering. But what I do remember, I watched her at that gathering, rushing around, helping everybody, caring for other people's needs. And when I went back home to Nottingham, I said to a friend, I've met the virtuous woman. Now, where those 3 words come from, they're from the book of Proverbs, chapter 31, verses 10 to 13. And it's in the Christian Bible. I'm just going to summarize it. Basically, the verses speak about a woman of noble character. Now, we've been through a lot of changes in our lives together, but I've had the privilege of watching Pat navigate all the challenges that a Black woman has to face in this world. It's been a privilege to support her in the highs and in the lows. And she has also supported me. Whether it's been a privilege or not, you'll have to ask her afterwards. It might have been slow torture, I don't know. We do work well together, especially in raising our 3 wonderful children. As you all know, are adults now. But this young lady that I met 35 years ago still has those characteristics that I saw in Manchester. Caring for others has stayed with her in her personal life, but also in her academic life. I believe her achievements, which we're here to celebrate today, are all rooted in that willingness to care for others before herself. Now, I'm from an educational background as well, and often in education, we measure success by looking at data. But I also think there's another method which is more valuable, especially in the long term. When you pass a student you once taught, or a colleague, or when you meet them again, are they pleased to see you? I have to say, from my observations, for Pat, the answer is yes. Pat, it has been an honor to see you work, the work you've done with your hands, and I hope your work brings you the praise that you deserve. Yes.
Well, that was better than I thought it was going to be. I wasn't sure at all what he was going to say. And I deliberately didn't look at it beforehand because why scare yourself? But yeah, that was good. Thank you. All right, so I'm just going to finish off by just thinking about some of the things about making a bigger table, about trying to make a difference to the discipline. Because obviously it's not enough just to let a few people in and then just keep everything as it is. Obviously, that would be more comfortable for a lot of people to do, but it just doesn't work, actually. When those people come in, they need to be themselves. So they need space to be themselves. And that means that you have to change what's already existing. You have to make a bigger table. So in the Royal Geographical Society annual conference last year, which was here in Birmingham, I was the first Black chair of that conference. And I was very aware that that's a really important thing to have happen, particularly in Birmingham, right? It needs to include the city. It needs to have an awareness of the city as a very diverse place. So this image of the Great Hall with myself and Parvati and my brother H, you can see on the end there, with Anita Shervington, who was an absolute dynamo. She's here today as well. And, you know, all of us as Black and brown people within this city trying to make a difference within the Great Hall, which is a place where you don't normally get very many people of color at all. This kind of image is a really important emblem for where we want to go. We want to make changes, bring people in who are going to make a difference. It's not just that we're Black and brown, it's that we want to make a difference, right? So one of the things that I do for that is the Ferry Road internships. Ferry Road means our road. It's from a book by Kai Miller, the cartographer finds his way to Zion, leads his way to Zion, finds his way to Zion. And it's the idea that if we're bringing up a generation of younger Black scholars, they need to find their own road, not one that's made for them. And so every year we recruit usually 5, sometimes 6, depending on how much money we've got. And it's funded by the Royal Geographical Society and the British Society of Geomorphology and the Geographical Association. So there's investment. And we pay them to do various kinds of work. They get mentored. They network very importantly with each other. And often these are young people where they're the only Black geographer within their whole undergraduate group. So it's really important that they meet other people and are able to know that it's not just them. So every year they themselves organize a fair, and the fair is one of the highlights of my year. It's always really good. If I had time, I'd show you a little bit about that, but I'll move on. So Rita mentioned the Stuart Hall Archive project. This is what I've been working on for the last 3 years. We had a plaque put up for Stuart Hall. Unbelievably, there wasn't a blue plaque for Stuart Hall before, so we had it as part of the project put up on the Muirhead Tower. It's one of the first blue plaques on campus for a Black person. In fact, I think it's the only one for a Black person. There is one for a person of color, but it's the first one for a Black person in Birmingham, can you imagine? So Stuart Hall is there, commemorated at least. But what we've been trying to do is to get people to engage with Stuart Hall's work and with his archive. So we've had a number of activities. We've made friendships and collaborations. Regan McDonald, who I know is here today, there he is at the back. He's from Icon Gallery, and he created an exhibition, which you can actually still see, I think, at the library, which is still on. We've worked with the Barber Institute, with an organization called SOMA. We've been trying to make those collaborations, enhance people's voices, and we've been trying to find follow-up funding to continue our work. So I will just leave you with this, which I only got the money for this like Friday. I'm really happy. So Arts Council England have given us £100,000. Yay, it's been so difficult to apply. It's taken us about 2 years to get the application together. So yes, so now they've given us the funding. So we're going to put up a Nissen hut, like a wartime hut, which is like the Centre for Contemporary Cultural Studies began in a wartime hut here on campus. So we're going to recreate that. Sonia Barrett is going to do some art workshops inside. She's going to decorate the outside of the hut with the artworks on the inside. So it's a kind of inside-outside palimpsestic pavilion type thing going on. There'll be lots of workshops during June as part of UOB Extra and Healing Arts Week. There'll be film screenings and exhibitions. Clayton, who's here, is going to be in conversation with Vanley Burke inside the hut. We're going to have all sorts of performances. Birmingham Opera Company are going to do a performance. It's quite exciting. I'm very excited. If you want to be involved with it at all, or just want to know some more, you can contact Rita on conjunctions.strand@gmail.com, or you can just contact me. You can go on our mailing list, and then you'll just hear about everything as and when it gets organized. All right. So we hope that you'll get involved with that. And yeah, that's it for me. Thank you so much. So sorry, Nick.
Oh, that was absolutely super. Thank you so much, Pat. Just for those who don't know me, my name's Nick Kettridge, so I'm the head of school in Geography, Earth and Environmental Sciences. And I just really want to just take a quick moment at the end. I'll be really quick because I realise that people want to go to the reception afterwards and to give thanks to Pat individually and personally. But I just want to give thanks to Pat for such an amazing, amazing talk, so thought-provoking. And also, I just need to point out that the room, the dressing of the room, the balloons, this has taken Inaugurals to a new level. I look forward to how these are going to go forward in the future from here. But I've known Pat for a long time, since she joined the University of Birmingham. I mean, my main memory of Pat is first memory from Pat is being on the field course in Wales. On a Welsh wet hillside, trying to convince the students to do glacial geomorphology and trying to convince Pat to do glacial geomorphology as well. It didn't go down that well, but my main memory is her handing out chocolates to students on the halfway point on a rainy Welsh hillside. But from then, I mean, Pat's been an absolute advocate and supporter for the school, a real critical friend as well. And one of those people that you're in meetings and she's always that person that sort of says, have you thought about this? And you're always that point where it's kind of like, no, I haven't. Thank you. And so, yeah, really kind of putting those sort of challenges in a really positive and supportive way. And that really comes from that deep intellect and that deep intellect that sits within the school. But as you sort of see in terms of the presentation today, that deep intellect and thought-provoking approach to the research that she undertakes. And I mean, I'm not going to try and sort of delve into the complexities. I just will not do it justice. I think the thing I actually found most interesting, there was so much I was expecting to see from today's presentation. The one thing I wasn't expecting to see, there was quantum physics. So that was a bit that did come as a surprise. I was not aware of at all. But that was really, really nice to see. But I think more than that, and more than the renowned global academic, the intellect that you're known for, I think the thing that I've really sort of taken from today is just the inspiration, that the extent to which you've highlighted in the early part of the talk how you were supported as an academic, but how you've used that and taken that journey forward to inspire others. And I think what's been really powerful today is the extent that you've used this opportunity as a way to bring people forward, to use this as an opportunity to share people's voices, to give them the opportunity on this stage to begin to develop and grow as their own academics and beyond. I thought that was incredibly powerful, and as a chance to use this time for that. And to really, even the thing that did stick in my mind is, you know, being described as the #1 superhero. And I think that needs to be on a badge going forwards as well. But as I say, I'm not going to speak for long, so I really should stop there before I go on for too long. But ultimately, I just really want to say a huge thank you to Pat for all the work you've done, all the support you've done for the school, and of course, well beyond, as you've demonstrated here today. And just before we end with one more final kind of round of applause, is just to say there is a reception down in the Lapworth Museum straight after this. If you don't know where the Lapworth Museum is, just follow somebody around who does know where the Lapworth Museum is. There'll be a general movement in that direction. So I look forward to seeing you down there. But ultimately, I just want to say a huge thank you to Pat. Brilliant presentation. And I look forward to see what comes next. Thank you.